Hey, what's going on, you guys? Welcome to another episode of the Trainer Talk. Today we're going to be talking about the different types of movements during training, as well as different types of equipment that you can use for training. So to start out, there's basically 3 different movements that you're going to be doing in any exercise that you perform. There's a concentric contraction, an isometric, or an eccentric. So a concentric contraction is basically shortening of the muscle. So if you were to think about a bicep curl, that's going to be going on the way up. You're shortening the bicep and contracting that muscle. If you were to curl the dumbbell up and hold it halfway for an extended period of time, that would be an isometric. So just think about a hold, like a wall sit or a plank, something like that. That'd be isometric. And then we have eccentric, is actually the lengthening of the muscle. So that would be coming down from your bicep curl. You're actually still contracting and you're getting strength gains from that eccentric. A lot of people don't realize how important eccentric is. They would just curl it up as heavy as they can do, and then they would drop it down, and they're losing a lot of the benefits of that movement. So we want to try to go over the benefits of it, and then we also want to talk about the different machines and free weights that you can use and the different benefits, pros and cons of those. So I'm going to let Bethany talk a little bit more in depth on the concentric, isometric, and eccentric, and then we'll get into the exercise equipment that you can use.
Yeah, so concentric is really, really important when it comes to building explosiveness, especially like when it comes to athletics or just general physical preparedness. Thinking of like a squat, like you want to get stronger in the squat. It helps you to propel your body, push your body away from the floor. For a deadlift, it would be just picking it up. That's the concentric part. So that's what we think of when we're going for a 1 rep max. That's what we're testing is our concentric strength. Now the eccentric part, that is actually where we're our strongest. If you think about it, for a squat, you have to lower down the squat before you can go back up. And usually people can control the squat on the way down, they just sometimes can't get it back up. So it's actually really important for building strength in the eccentric part, kind of like you touched on, Taylor. And it also causes the most muscle damage or disruption, which is what kind of stimulates muscle growth. So it's not the bad kind of muscle damage, it's the good kind that helps for growth of strength and muscle. So focusing on going slow, keeping control. It also is a great way to build your form on it. Is if you control that eccentric part, then it kind of builds in that mind-muscle connection of this is the pathway that I need to take, and then making the concentric and the eccentric look exactly the same. So some people with squats, they'll go down perfectly fine, but then their butt comes up really high when they're trying to stand up, not keeping their chest up. So you want to make it so that you're both going up and down on a squat, or curling up and then letting the bar down. It looks pretty much exactly the same for all your different exercises. And then for isometric, some really good benefits that I kind of overlook sometimes is you build that mind-muscle connection. You can feel the muscle working better when you're doing an isometric hold of the biceps, or if you did wall sit. I mean, your legs burn crazy. We were just doing glute bridges with the barbell, and then we had to do a hold for a minute after. The burn on that was insane. Didn't think it was going to be that hard, but it was. And that just helps building strength in certain positions. So we're doing planks, so you're building that midline stability. You're building that strength and endurance strength in that position so that it transfers to your other lifts. Same thing if you're doing a pause at the bottom of the squat. It's building strength at the bottom. So if you tend to fail your squats at the bottom, then you would want to practice the pauses there and isometric holds there.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of go over a few other things. So for concentric, it's just basically you're building strength and muscle mass. That's how you build strength and muscle, the easiest, quickest way, the best way. But eccentric really expands on that growth of the muscle, like Bethany was saying. So it's really funny because I'll have people who will be doing bicep curls and just doing them super quick with pretty heavy weights, and I say, okay, now slow that down. And they struggle a lot more to do as many reps as they were doing, because when you slow down that eccentric, yes, you're stronger there, but it also wears you out a little bit quicker. So you might not be able to go as heavy for as long and do as many reps. So it's really, really important if you want to build muscle to slow down your movements on both the concentric and eccentric part. Isometric not only helps with what Bethany was talking about, but it also helps with joint stability. So I personally have a lot of shoulder issues, and I have a lot of clients who also have shoulder injuries. It seems like that's just a very common injury overall. So I like to do a lot of like stability work with the shoulder, and that can help like improve that injury and also improve your range of motion. It's nice to do isometric because you don't need a lot of weight for it to really burn. Like Bethany said, we were literally using a empty barbell, a 35-pound barbell for our glute bridges, and we're dying. So you can, if you hold a 5-pound or 8-pound, maybe 10-pound weight above your head for 30 seconds to a minute, you're going to be wearing that muscle out very quickly. So they're very beneficial.
Not to mention, you can use a 5-pound weight or 3-pound weight or 8-pound weight, like a really light. So if you have like an injury or something, you can use a really light weight that's not going to hurt you, but you just hold it and you're going to build that strength and hopefully help with that injury without having to put too much like load on it. So you don't have to worry about re-injuring it or anything. So that'd be great for that as well. And just to kind of give you guys a tip on the concentric, eccentric, like a good kind of rule of thumb with most exercises is the eccentric should actually be about 1 second or 2 longer than the concentric. So I'm doing curls, it might be 1 to 2 seconds up and then like a 3 to 4 second down to get the most benefit from that. If you're doing squats, you don't want it to slam, drop right to the bottom of the squat. You want to go down nice and controlled, and it's actually going to kind of have a rebound effect. So when you get to the bottom, think of like stretching a rubber band. If you go down nice and controlled, you have all those muscles engaged, and then once you get to the bottom, you're able to spring back up out of your squat better. And so it's a little bit quicker on the way up, that explosive power that she was talking about. So that's just a kind of a rule of thumb or a tip to give you guys to practice if you are lifting in the gym. Think about both ways of that movement with anything that you're doing. Shoulder press, leg press, squats, curls, whatever you're doing. Focus on both the concentric and the eccentric, or you could almost think of it like the relaxation phase of the lift. Like you're coming down from the squat, it's not super hard, but you can make it harder by focusing on what you're doing. So hopefully that helps out you guys. Now we'll move on to the equipment selection, and we want to go over the pros and cons of both. So we have just kind of 2 categories, your machines and then your free weights. So under machines, think of this like your selectorized machines or your plate loaded, like your leg press, your leg extension, hamstring curl, chest press, shoulder press, the cable crossover, things like that. And then you have your free weights, which is going to be like your dumbbells, your kettlebells, your barbells, things like that, anything that you're just using that's not a machine, basically. So we want to go over some pros and cons on that. I'll let Bethany start, and then we'll just kind of go back and forth on it.
Yeah, so first with like machines, some really good parts about machines is you can maintain your form a little bit easier. It's good if you do struggle with keeping form on like something that's a free weight. You don't have to worry about it as much because the machine kind of guides you. Like if you're doing a chest press, it just kind of guides you just straight out and then back. So same thing with like a lat pull down, like you don't have to worry about pull-ups, form being off, it kind of guides you. You also have like a picture of exactly what to do right there, so you can literally check back and forth, or you can video yourself and make sure that that's correct with what the machine is showing. You also don't have to worry about failure. So some people get scared of using heavier dumbbells or heavier barbells and like not being able to get the weight back up. But with machines, like if you can't do it, then you just set it back down. Except for the leg press, that one would get a little scary. But on the other machines, like if you just can't get it up, then you can't, and then it's no big deal. Some cons though is you don't build as much overall strength because you're just not putting as much load on your body. You can build, obviously you can build strength, but it's not going to have the carryover that a free weight exercise would because it's less functional. So you're not getting as much of stability built in your joints all around, and then the whole connection of the whole body. So like even like bench press and deadlifts versus like a chest press machine or a hamstring curl. It's like, yes, you're using the same muscles, but you're not able to transfer that like to the barbell lifts as much because you're just not having to engage so many more muscles. That's the biggest thing. And then with free weights, you have more carryover to other exercises. So like if you're doing a one-legged squat, it would carry over to a two-legged barbell squat, or you're doing, dumbbell goblet squat, lunges, it all kind of carries over together. a little bit more than if you're doing machine work. Then it also improves joint stability strength that way, because you have to stabilize, working all those small stabilizer muscles around your joints, and also having to engage other parts of the body, like even the bench press. Like you have to engage your legs in the bench press, except if you're on a machine, you really don't have to, and you can still get a good benefit out of that. The form is of course more important. You do have the risk of failing if you go too heavy. Most people in the gym though don't really risk that. They usually go too light. Just in my experience with people starting out, is they're usually just not very sure of themselves, so they can build confidence in the machines versus the free weights to start off.
Yeah. And I would say the biggest way to differentiate our strength starts in the core and then it goes to our extremities. So if you can build a really strong core, you're typically going to be stronger everywhere else. So that's where the free weights are definitely going to be much more beneficial, because when you're doing anything with a dumbbell or a barbell, you have to usually brace your core, and you're going to have some sort of stability going on. You have to balance and stabilize that weight with whatever you're doing, so you have many more muscles firing than if you were on, for example, a machine that's guiding you. And typically with a machine, you're going to be, most of them are seated, so you're not necessarily bracing your core at all. You're just sitting down in a seat and using less muscle groups. So
that's exactly what I was going to say, actually. It's that's one of my pet peeves about machines, I guess, when people only use those, is the lack of core stability, unless you are very conscious about it and really try. But yeah, like Taylor said, if you're sitting on the machine, you're probably not using your core, which is not really benefiting you. However, they are great for beginners. They're great for elderly or anyone with injuries, because you can just sit there and work a muscle group that you're able to work. If you're not able to do lunges or squats, you can sit and still work your legs. Or if you have a knee injury, I had a lot of people who have knee injuries who can't squat or lunge, but they can do leg extensions, hamstring curls, and leg press. It just feels better on their body. So that's where it can be really beneficial. And again, for a beginner to just kind of start strengthening some muscles and then slowly work to using free weights. Again, it helps beginners learn proper form to avoid injuries in the first place. You just need to make sure that the machine is adjusted to fit you right. If you don't know how to do that, you need to ask somebody for help. And be kind of conscious of if a machine just, no matter what you seem to do, doesn't feel natural, maybe find something else to do. I know there's some machines, for example, the one where you're sitting and doing a bicep curl. I just don't feel comfortable on that one, so I'd rather sit on a bench and just use free weights instead, because that's not hurting me, it's not really any more challenging. So just kind of be aware of that, but try to adjust the machine just so that it fits you well. Free weights are just more beneficial overall, kind of like Bethany already said. You're going to be, even if you're sitting doing an overhead shoulder press, you are still engaging your core versus if you're on a machine doing it, especially if you don't have a back rest and you're just kind of sitting up. You have to engage that core for pretty much anything you're doing with free weights. You may not be able to go as heavy with free weights versus machines, and that's okay. You're still going to build more overall strength using lighter free weights than you are machines, so slow it down. Work on those concentric, the eccentric, and isometric, and you will get stronger using free weights versus machines.
Yeah, for sure. And I like that you said the machines are great for learning the form. So if you don't know how to do a chest press or shoulder press or a leg press or something like that, those are great to use just to kind of get that pattern memorized, because you can go from doing, for example, a chest press machine for a few weeks and you're going to build some neuromuscular strength, and your muscle memory is just going to learn that movement, and you can translate that to a flat bench with dumbbells, and then you'll know how to do that motion. So it's a great place to start if you've never done anything. But I would highly recommend after a little while to throw in some free weights, progress from the machines to the free weights, or machines are also great for just accessory work. So we talk about compound movements. We do a lot of functional training, like doing CrossFit, which means we're using multiple muscle groups, doing very complex lifts, such as power cleans and squats and deadlifts and snatches, things like that. But we want to do our compound, our most difficult lifts first, and then typically we throw in accessories just to kind of focus on single muscle groups and single joint at a time. So for example, on a typical leg day, somebody might start out with squats and then maybe go to the leg press. Maybe they'll do some other kind of maybe like lunges or split squats, something like that. That's kind of challenging, and you're still practicing that stability, strength. And then you might finish up with just maybe some hamstring curls on a machine or leg extensions on a machine. But you wouldn't want to do it in reverse order. You wouldn't want to like fry your quads or hamstrings and then go and try to do a barbell squat, because you're going to be very fatigued and it could sacrifice form unless you're like an expert, unless you're a very seasoned athlete or lifter. Maybe they want to do that for a pre-fatigue and then squat, but for most people it would be highly suggested to start with the harder lifts and then finish with the accessory movements. So just another tip that I figured I'd throw in there.
Yeah, I was gonna say that like there are situations where like you might want to switch and do say like an isolation movement first. Like in a case of like the benefits of like isometric is building that mind muscle connection, or doing a isolated movement on a machine would help for you to just feel that muscle better. So, if you wanted to go in and you're doing like a bench press and you wanted to feel your chest, but if you don't warm it up properly, you don't feel it there, then by doing, some flies on a machine or something, and if that's able to activate it, and then you can feel it when you bench press, then it would be beneficial. But obviously, like you said, you don't want to like fry it and then try and go squat if like squatting is your main goal.
Yeah, I was gonna say like almost use it more of as a warm-up.
Yes.
So like I actually used to do that. My hips would not stretch out and open up very good for squats and deadlifts and things. So I would actually hop on the inner and outer thigh machine, which is the abduction, adduction, and I would do like maybe 2 sets of 20 at a really light weight just to get my hips really warmed up and stretched out, and then I would be ready for squats. So I wouldn't recommend doing like 3, 4, 5 sets with a heavy weight for a lot of reps and completely burn it out before squatting, but like doing that as an activator or a warm-up could be very beneficial actually. Especially if you're not used to warming up very good, which we do talk about a lot. You need to get a good warm-up in and get the blood flowing before you do your lifts.
Yeah. You could always switch it up too, of like having a machine and a free weight, like exercises back to back. Like they wouldn't be of the same muscle group. I wouldn't recommend that unless you wanted to do like something where you really exhausted it, doing dumbbell, squats or something like that, and then doing leg extensions. Like you could technically superset that, play around with it a little bit. But it could be really beneficial, like if you're doing dumbbell bench and then you did lat pull downs with it, and going back
opposing muscles. I always really like doing opposites. And she's talking about supersets where you do one exercise for a certain number of reps and you immediately do another one for a certain number of reps, and then you take your rest. Benefits of that, there's a lot of different benefits. You're able to get a lot more work done, short amount of time. So you're going to have an elevated heart rate. So for those of you that maybe are looking to cut weight or cut body fat, you're going to burn more calories during your workout. You're going to get a lot more done in a shorter amount of time. And I always like doing like chest and back supersets. Biceps, triceps, a lot of people do. Just putting them together, you're going to get a little bit more bang out of your workout, very much. So, and just to kind of give you guys another little tip, now that we've talked about the different machines and the contractions and stuff, if you are new or something like that, and you're coming in, you don't know like how many reps do I do, how many sets do I do on this, how many machines should I be doing per muscle group, things like that. I would say for a good way to start out is if you can do like at least one exercise per muscle group, if you're just doing like maybe 3 days a week. And if you're going in and let's say you're doing the chest press machine or dumbbell press, something like that, if you want to build a lot of strength is typically built in 1 to 8 reps with a heavier load. Muscle growth, so hypertrophy, typically build 8 to 12 reps with a moderate weight. And then muscular endurance is going to be 12 to 15, 12 to 20 or beyond, with a lighter weight that you can do more reps of. Now, we say that rep range, you want to pick a weight that is challenging for that rep range. We say that to people, but then they'll still grab a weight and they can do it 10 times very easily and they stop at 10. We want to try to get you, if you're doing sets and reps for 8 to 12, it should be a weight that you could maybe do a maximum of like 12 to 14 reps. You know, so that weight is almost going to failure. You have a couple reps in reserve that you can still do. And then typically like 3 sets of that rep range for whatever machine or exercise you're doing. And another thing, just kind of keep in mind, the less reps you do, typically the more sets you're going to want to do. So if I'm doing a very heavy lift like a bench press or a squat or a deadlift for maybe 1 to 5 reps, I'm going to want to do 4 or 5, maybe 6 sets of that heavier load to increase my volume, whereas the accessories, where I typically do more reps of, the 8 to 12 or the 12 to 15, you can just get away with 2, 3, or 4 sets. So, and you guys feel free to, any other tip on that that you want?
Yeah, I mean, I think you pretty much covered everything. One thing is you just might need to take a little bit more rest on free weights versus machine weights, just because the overall like tax on your central nervous system, like, you do a heavy deadlift, and even though you do 1 or 2 reps, you're exhausted and like dizzy right afterwards. So you have to like take like probably 2-3 minutes of rest at least if you're going really heavy.
Yes.
And you're going to that point of like almost passing out a little bit. Then you need to let your whole body recover. Even though you feel fine, like it's still overall you have to still recover a little bit more. Whereas machines, you can maybe take a minute rest.
So if you're doing something very heavy load or very complex lift, you typically want more rest, like she said. And then if you're doing something that's more accessory, not as hard, or for more reps, with a lighter weight, you can get away with 30 seconds rest or 60 seconds rest. For example, like these guys, we all maxed out back squat, you did a front squat. So when they were warming up and building up, their rest was a little bit shorter, it was a lighter weight. But then when they got to their heavier sets, they were taking maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes rest before they attempted their max, because once you're lifting that really heavy weight, it is taxing that central nervous system. So you need to just give your body that rest so that it's prepared and ready to go for that next lift. However, I will say I see a ton of people that will do a machine, for example, that doesn't take a lot of core strength or stabilization, and they'll do their set of 8 to 12, and then they'll talk to somebody for 5 minutes, and then they go to their next set. They don't realize that they're actually really taking away the benefits of that workout. You want to make sure that you're not resting too long while you're doing that type of training. You can get a lot better workout and benefits as far as the growth and stuff if you're keeping a controlled amount of rest. So a suggestion could be, if you are doing your sets and reps in there, set a timer on your phone, or at least set a running clock, and just kind of keep an eye on how much rest you're taking. Typically for every exercise and lift that you're doing, you're going to be between like 30 seconds and 3 minutes, I would say, is a pretty good rule of thumb, depending on the level of the lift, the complexity of it, and the weight. So if you're really heavy, like we said, you're going to be closer to that 2 or 3 minutes. But if it's a lighter machine or an easier lift, lightweight, you can stick to 30 to 60 seconds, and then just meet in the middle for anything else.
Yeah, I think everything kind of depends on what your own specific goals are too. So knowing what your goals are. I mean, if you're trying to lose weight,
keep the rest short.
Yeah, don't be waiting around 2 minutes. Try to get off the machines as much as you can, I would say personally. I just think you get more benefit overall from using free weights. Again, machines, we use them for certain things, they're great. But I think just overall, if you were trying to lose weight or even build muscle, like getting out the free weights and barbells are where it's at for the most part. But,
Yep.
yeah.
Totally agree. You're going to get, one other thing I like mentioning to people is when you're using the barbells and you're doing like deadlifts and squats and bench, you're actually going to gain more muscle and strength in comparison to something that's very similar or working the same muscles, because you get a really high neuroendocrine response. So when you use a heavy weight that's very complex, like the snatches and the cleans, deadlifts, things like that, you're basically working every muscle in your body and you're stabilizing. So you're going to have more growth hormone, testosterone release throughout the body. So you're going to get more strength, you're going to burn more fat, and you're going to build more muscle from doing those compound movements. So, in comparison, like we have a lot of people that, for example, if they want to grow their biceps, a lot of guys in here want to grow their biceps, so they do a ton of just bicep curls. But they're not getting a very good neuroendocrine response. If they came in and did a ton of under grip pull-ups or rope climbs or bent over rows, like they actually get more neuroendocrine response from back exercises and things like that that are working more muscle groups. in combination with the bicep, they're actually going to get more benefit from that in most circumstances. And then they can throw in those bicep curls as an accessory, is how I would recommend doing it. Anything else you guys want to add?
No, I think that's good.
Cool. All right. I had one other thing, but I had forgotten it. So we'll cap it off right there. Thanks for tuning in, you guys. If you haven't, make sure you like and subscribe. Share the video with somebody if they need help, if they're a beginner, they're maybe nervous about joining the gym. Show them this, and maybe it'll just help them kind of know where to start. Obviously, reach out to us, and we can help you get started as well. We do gym demonstration sessions. It's basically a one-on-one personal training session for 30 to 60 minutes, where it's just you and one of the coaches, myself, Caitlin, or Bethany, and we'll take an hour or 30 minutes to show you everything in the gym with proper form and technique, all the machines, different dumbbell movements, things like that. So if you're interested in that, don't hesitate to reach out and set up a free appointment. We'll meet with you and get you started. Other than that, have a great day, guys, and stay healthy. See ya.